Alright, so now we're going to animate this. So the first thing I want to do is come down here and add location, rotation, scale to my key set. Then I'm going to hit I, right click I, and you can see that made these yellow. And so now we have a keyframe at frame 1 locking in the position, rotation, and scale for each of these 3 door pieces. The next thing I'm going to do is jump up to about frame 50 and just move this out like so. And then I. Now if I jump to the start, you can see, oh, well somehow I missed the top piece. I. Alright, now we've got the basic animation. So just to kind of clean this up a little bit, I'm going to take this edge here and duplicate it, so that'll be Shift D, and then 1 for front view, P to separate selection, and then tab back into object mode and grab the selection here. And I'm just going to move these in like that. And it's kind of hard to tell where the edge is here, so if we turn on ambient occlusion, we should see the edge a little bit more clearly. So that's in the shading section, ambient occlusion, and that looks much better. And I'll set this last point to be 0 on the global z-axis. And then A to select all, E to extrude, left click to lock it in, and S to scale out. And I want it to scale relative to the 3D cursor again. Like so. Scale it down on the Z. And then I'm going to hit Control L, move it in this way. S, Y, 0, and then extrude it back. And actually, before I add depth to it, I'm going to position everything where I want it to be. So looking at the reference image again, 3, we could do this part. I'm not sure if that's totally necessary for this tutorial. Yeah, why don't we do that? So 1 for front view, and just kind of line this up. Now we can't see the top, so I'm just going to assume it stretches out like that. W, why don't we subdivide this whole face? So that'll be Control Tab, Face Selection, W, Subdivide. That gives us some more geometry to work with. And since we can't see the top, I'm just going to cut it off up there like that. So it's kind of hard to tell what happens here, but I think that this, whoops, H to hide. I think we want to start here, and then I can't tell if this comes straight out toward the camera, and maybe there's just a little bit of perspective change here, or if this is actually angled away from the door. I think that it is angled away from the door, so Alt H to unhide everything, E to extrude, S to scale, whoops, and I only want to do that on the outer ring. Like so, E to extrude, S to scale. And then I'm just going to bring this forward and scale it out. And maybe we should actually create a outer edge first. Yeah, I think this will be slightly easier. So now we're just going to grab these and pull it forward, as well as scaling it out in the X direction. And then I'm going to set this to median point. And actually, you know what? Why don't we do individual origins? And that's just going to make it scale a little bit more naturally. And then I'm going to set this to 0 and 1. Maybe not. Median point, SX. Take the whole thing, Control L, Control N. It looks like the normals are facing backward. And what should we do about that? Try inside. There we go. Bring these two in. And it's having trouble shading these faces now because I created non-planar geometry. And so essentially, every face needs to be a perfectly flat plane. And you can see from certain angles, this plane is obviously being warped in the middle. So there's a few ways we can fix that. Typically, the best way is to just not do that in the first place. But we could add a triangulate. Apply that. And now it actually understands how to shade those faces, but they still don't look great. Another thing we could do is grab all three of them, get the median point as the pivot, and then set this to normal. And so that's going to give us a single direction that they should all face. And then we could do S, Z, Z, and scale that down to 0. Now we've got a flat face there. So I'm going to do that for both of these sides. S, Z, Z, 0. Now the front got messed up. So for that, we can... why don't we just do the same thing? S, Z, Z, 0. And that worked out pretty well. Alright, so now if we hit play, we've almost got the finished animation, but the doors are visible through this wall. And this wall also looks kind of funny with the shading, so I'm going to hit S, Z, Z again, and try to flatten that out. As well as pulling it forward. And I think this whole door frame needs a little bit more thickness. S. And so now I'm going to set this back to global. S, Y, Y. Alright, that's looking pretty slick. And I guess we should clean up the back a little bit. So for that, I'll take these faces, extrude them back, S, Y, then I'll take these faces and S, Y, 0, move them in like so, and then once again scale this guy, S, Y, something like that. Alright, so now it's closed off on all sides, but the top still cuts through like that, so why don't we just drag this up. And I don't like that. Maybe we can pull this down a little bit. Alright, well, I guess that's fine for now. Why don't we just see what this looks like? Not bad, not bad. Got it cleaned up on both sides. The geometry is a little bit wonky down here. I'm going to delete this face. And, alright, I guess that looks fine. So really the last thing we have to do to clean this up is figure out some solution for the top part here. And it would really depend on what this was up against. Like if this was like up against a cliff face, like in the reference image, we could really pretty easily merge this into the cliff face. But since we don't know what it's going up against, it's a little bit weird to modify. Alright, so the last thing I'm going to do is add a circle just to give this door a little bit more detail. So I clicked on the top portion of the door, tabbed into edit mode, and then I'm hitting R, X, 90, and I need to make sure I'm in vertex mode for that. R, X, 90, and I'm going to bring it forward slightly, scale it way down, and move it up. Now, we already have the mirror modifier, so we want to get rid of the left half of this. Then I'm going to hit F to create a face, and E to extrude this forward. And then I'm going to inset this with the I key, and extrude that back. And I actually don't like the way that looked. Why don't we try extruding and then scaling in. And since we were doing that in edit mode, the circle moves with the rest of the object, though it is now clipping through the wall just ever so slightly. So we can take that whole piece and move it back. Alright, so that's our finished door. In the next video, we're going to bring this into Unity and actually trigger the animation with some C# code. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy the next video.